We do have a quorum. All 4 trustees are here. So I will go ahead and entertain a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
Motion has been moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, we're going to go directly into public comment. Our clerk is going to grab those sheets.
Get all of them.
Okay.
Blanks like out there.
So we have no public comment, so I will go ahead and entertain a motion to approve. Oh, sorry, we're to action items. Yeah, no, I already approved. So there is no consent agenda. So,
Chair, I got a quick question, and I'm sorry, I just thought of this. If I could,
mhm.
it's a procedural question. When it comes to public comments, does that have to be open and then closed by motion? I know we've been doing it this long,
Mhm.
and that came to mind because yesterday at the planning and zoning, we always close public comment before we move into deliberation.
You're not required to. It's not indicated on our agenda as an action item,
Okay.
so we can't take action on it.
Probably now's not a good time to bring that up since we've been doing it for years.
So, yeah. So, go ahead.
Can I make a quick announcement before we get started?
Yes.
I've had a lot of people ask me whether I was gonna run again this year. And I left a kind of, and I'm doing this for the record, so I don't back myself out of it, or change my mind. But seriously, I am not gonna run. I think it's an open seat and whoever grabs it can take it. And hopefully we can keep going with the things that we have been accomplishing, and whoever is brought next is elected can what do you call it? Get along with everybody here like we have been. So there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's important to let people know during an election cycle, gladly we have you for a few more months. And so we'll be able to give you a formal goodbye and share our thoughts then. Sound good, trustees?
Money's good.
Yeah.
You'll get some.
All right,
you'll get some
guys.
thoughts from me.
So now I'm going to move us into the supplemental levy resolution. And I am going to turn this over to Dr. Russell.
Chair Taylor, trustees, tonight we're going to be looking into the supplemental levy resolutions. If you remember the last board meeting, we had talked through some of the options for the board, and the board had narrowed that down to 2 options. So we're going to talk through a couple of those. So have Tyler kind of bring up a real quick PowerPoint just to kind of, again, set the stage, and then we'll walk through what each of those resolutions read and say. Now, there are a couple. We have been working with Holly Troxel, our legal team that deals with our levy and bonds. They have helped prepare this information for us, and they have been looking into what the requirements that we need to have on the ballot because there is that new tax relief funds that are coming from the state. And this is still new, so they were double checking some things. We believe right now, after talking with the state Secretary of State, that we are good. However, because this is still the new law, there may be another review coming from the Secretary of State, and if there is a change in the wording, we may have to come back as a board and discuss that. So we are new in this, like many other districts are. How do you have that ready? So just a reminder, our current levy right now, $8 million, and these are the major areas. Not going to spend time on that. I think we're all aware of where our current are as well. Looking at last year's levy rate, where we were 1.227 per $1,000, and then looking at this year's, the 23 through 24 school year, we're looking at a levy rate of 0.96. You'll notice the difference between last year and 2022 and 2023 is that bond payment, that which went from 8 million down to 4.5 million this year. We anticipate pulling that down. I'm going to have Randy kind of maybe explain that in just a moment. We will be able to pay off the bond. It will not actually be officially ending, I guess is what Randy helped clarify it, but at June 30th of this year. So we will no longer have a bond debt that you see there after this fiscal year in June, and that's going to have a big impact on the overall taxes. Now, I think as we get into the wording, that is going to not reflect in the wording on the ballot because of some current laws, and we'll talk about As I stop there, any questions on our current rate or what we anticipate for this year?
Yeah, Chair Taylor,
Trustee Kirkman?
would these be adjustable rates? I mean, if the rates did change throughout a year, are they ever adjustable or?
Trustee Kirkman, what these are anticipated based on the property values as they see now. So what happens is we don't actually set the rate, we set the amount levied. And then the county is the one that sets the rate. Now they are really close. The only thing that hits us, and this is where the judgment fund comes in, is when a big company comes in and says, nope, I don't think that's right. And then they fight the rate, or when families come in and fight, nope, that's way too high. Those are the type of things. It takes a lot to swing our rate from these projections, but
On the levy,
on
I think
the-
that's where I was getting confused.
Yeah.
Because the bond is tied to interest rates then.
no. So our bond is based on the payments that we're supposed to make. And so we're able to pull down 21 months early in order to do that. And we've been doing that for a few months, which is why we've been lowering that amount. Our bond payments are usually around 13, 14 million. As our bonds are trailing off, payments aren't as much. And this last of the 4.5 million will put enough in the bank to pay off all the rest of our bonds and interest.
When that bond's paid off, do they give you a piece of paper you can have a burn party, that kind of a thing where you can?
I wish. There'll be a lot less. There'll be some things I don't need to do in the audit because it's all done. So that'll be nice.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Drew, could you just clarify again, June 30th, we anticipate no longer having a bond debt. However, the bond will technically,
The debt will be out there because these bonds are not able to be prepaid.
thank you.
So what happens is we just keep the money in the bank, earn its interest, that money, and the money goes towards paying the payments on time. And so the bonds are still technically there. We just haven't been, we just don't have the ability to defease them because we've already refinanced them. And so we can't prepay them at this point in time.
That's interesting.
There's like two years left. I mean,
Is that a
really.
statutory, is that statute?
It's,
In terms of no
it's
prepayment?
basically the bond, the way bonds work.
You're not
This last thing
supposed to-
people really want is a bond that could be prepaid. So when you refinance it, usually there's a no call option is really what it's called. And at that point in time, investors count on that basically that annuity payment over years. And so that's what that means. So usually what happens in these cases, like if we refinance it, some of that money goes into another account and pays that over time. So those bonds will be paid and then we get the new money. And at this point in time, we're just creating our own little account that will pay off the rest of the debt. We will have no more debt that will need to be levied to our taxpayers.
Right, okay, that makes perfect sense.
All right, Tyler, next slide. So these were the options that we discussed last time. Option one is the $13.7 million. And the next one is the 14.7 million. The only difference you'll see is when we talk to the administration, there is 500,000 less on curriculum in option one. So we would have take away that. And then there is 500,000 less in maintenance projects on option one. The 500,000 plus the 500,000 makes up $1 million less. That's why there's 13.7 million in option one and 14.7 in option two.
Greg, on the curriculum, are you and your staff comfortable with that less than
So-
500,000, given the price and market and everything for curriculum?
Yeah, Chair Taylor, Trustee Kirkman, it's a great question. What that would entail at 1.5 is we probably wouldn't be adopting new curriculum, but we would just be paying the leases that are, I don't want to use lease, it's the renewals of some of our online, I guess they are online leases for our digital components of the curriculum, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So they give you an online lease, for example, in like our math, there's an online section that we can use. We'll have to re-up that here in a couple of years. That's what it allows us to do. The 2 million, it's a little low considering inflation, but we're not adopting K-5 reading. That was a really large, it's the expensive one. We probably could get a few more curriculum, but at least a curriculum probably adopted. We really need social studies. We probably need to start looking at health as another one. But we could live with 1.5, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I appreciate that.
And then the maintenance projects. So the difference between option one and two, and this goes into a conversation that we'll have next week as we start talking around boundaries and maybe looking at the needs of the district and the schools and repurposing. if we choose to at some point redraw boundaries or take a school offline or repurpose a school in some ways, we are going to need some finances to be able to remodel some of those schools for the current programs that we plan on putting them if that makes a change. And so, and Mr. Stoffer can come up here and clarify if you'd like, but essentially that would give us a little more leeway to do that on option 2 than option 1. So option 1 doesn't give us a whole lot. Again, real similar. It probably would meet just a few basic maintenance needs. Most of that likely probably to be used if we do redraw boundaries or repurpose buildings in some way. A lot of that money probably would be used for that kind of an expense, if that makes sense.
Okay, trustees,
Questions on
any
that,
other
or questions for Mr. Stoffer if you have further on that?
And this is a lot of information that we went over. It's the proposal that's going to be new. And we did have an opportunity to go through some different ways of discussing that already in the last few days. Okay,
Chair, I have a question.
sure.
I did talk with Superintendent Greg Russell and asked him what his thoughts were. For me, as somebody who's leaving, I want to put him in a place where he feels like he's being supported. So I asked him what his thought was, and he told me his thought, but he told me he's still kind of battling inside of him just because, you know, he wants to do what's right. So I'm going to ask him again. What are your thoughts and your recommendation?
So Trustee Valle, or Chair Taylor, Trustee Valle, it was a good question, and I have gone back and forth. When we originally started this, we sat down as an administration team and said, you know, what are the district's needs? And we mentioned, you know, the 14.7 number was would help us meet many of those needs that we saw, but also understanding that this is critical. We have to pass it. And then when we started seeing the ballot language for me, because the way the ballot language was written, I began to get a little concerned because the way it was written, and we'll explain that in just a moment. So I was thinking, what will people see in the way it's written? So I went back and talked to the administrative team again, because I don't always make these decisions on my own. And what we talked to the team, we still feel that 14.7 is probably, at least from the administration's recommendation, to go with that. But we would also be happy with the 13.7. But the reason why that is, again, with the curriculum, it would give us a little bit more. And then if we are repurposing buildings, it does allow us to have a little more of those expenses to do a remodel to fit a program if we are going to, say, use a school for a different purpose if we end up doing that. But, you know, 13.7 is something that we absolutely would be happy with. And I think this is what the board will have to wrestle with and talk through as you look at the ballot language.
So the extra 500,000 in curriculum, I know that you said it'll work, but what I'd like to know, if you could answer this question, I know it's going to be a loaded question. How much better off would our students be with an extra $500,000 in that curriculum budget? And that's a very big question, but I think you know where I'm going. I don't want to short our students because we don't have another 500,000. I want to make sure that, you know, we are giving you and the teachers the tools to teach the kids.
Yeah,
with the right curriculum.
Chair Taylor, Trustee Kirkman, it's a great question. And it's, again, I think we probably like 2.5 million, you know, because I don't know what the CBM, you know, our secondary math is going to be in 2 years, what that's going to come back at. I don't have that crystal ball to predict what inflation is going to be, because when we purchased that 5 years ago, it was an X price. And we know that has come up. So the critical thing, and what I spent most of the day doing, and which I will share with the board, is what happens if we don't have a levy. I actually am breaking that down to what that truly means. And I will be sending that out to the board as well, so you can be aware. To answer your question, we have to have the renewals in our curriculum. We cannot not have a renewal. So the 1.5 would meet the needs. But 2 million would allow us to, I think, look at an additional curriculum adoption, maybe a social studies or something. We have not had a social studies for quite some time. Mr. Knopp reminds me that we still use the health book that he taught in 1996. So it's those type of things that I think would help our students. So
And this is what concerns me about this, is I know it's 500,000 in the big picture. It may not seem like a lot, but 500,000 is 500,000. But it just bothers me. It doesn't sit well when we have to scrape the bottom, when we're getting close
Well-
to the bottom with the money that we have. You know what I mean? I mean, there is that fiscal responsibility, but fiscal responsibility to me also means you spend the money to get the best that you can get with the money that you have. It's not just the cheapest of everything and not spending money and so on and so on. To me, that's not the total definition of fiscal responsibility. And that goes along with the maintenance too.
It does. It does.
So I don't know. I mean, you don't have to respond to that. That's just some thoughts I want to get out there. It does concern me, especially with the curriculum, because that's what we're all about, is making sure that we're providing the best education for students.
I would say all of those impact students, though. I don't think there's
Yeah,
a single
absolutely.
one on that whole list does not have a actual drastic impact to students when you look at what is on that.
So here's another tough question, probably. And I apologize to Taylor and if you have something. Given the success, if you will, and that might be the wrong term to use, of bonds that passed yesterday,
Bonds and levies.
not bonds, levies, but there was a bond over in Bonneville County that passed. But the levies, especially closer to home, and they passed by pretty significant margins. I mean, one was at 70-something%. I think Valley Views was around 50, 60. Yeah. So, I mean, what kind of a story does that tell the Nampa School District when we're facing this question here?
Chair Taylor, Trustee Kirkman, we were watching that very closely as well, because I think we wanted to see what that would look like. Every community is different, though.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really important to consider. And, our bond did not do well. I think it's another thing for us to consider.
I
So
don't think none of the bonds did well, but the
we had the
levies,
last one.
the levies did, though, and that's
They
what I
did.
find interesting.
So it's why I think we have kind of waffled between 13.7 and 14.7. And I think when you read the ballot language, as we will in a second, and you see that tax impact and the way it's worded and the way we legally have to word it, it does say an increase. And my concern is, as patrons go to the ballot, they're going to see an increase and think my taxes are going to increase. When we go, as mentioned, the bond payment is going to be paid off. The overall tax impact will lessen after June 30. But if I'm not aware of everything, the initial ballot is going to say, wow, I'm increasing again.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to be really careful on. And that's where I struggle a little bit with.
Trustees, I think looking at the ballot language will be really helpful to further the conversation if we can get to that slide possibly.
Yeah, let's go to that, Tyler, if you would. We can skip the laws. We put in a couple of laws in there for you if you're curious about the laws. This is a really interesting slide. Going back to what Trustee was Kirkman
You don't
talked
have to,
about.
you could go through those two slides if it builds
Okay.
precedence moving up. I
Well, I
just
think
don't know
this
if we
is an
have all the
important one
pieces we need
because-
yet to have the conversation.
Talking about fiscal responsibility, this is the burden that the district has been working on the last 6 years. And you can see that we have been very purposeful about continuing to lessen that burden as much as we can. Now, I don't know what the city has done, so I don't know if people are seeing that less of that impact, but the school district is trying hard on their own to lessen that burden. And you'll see that drop. So it's pretty significant. And again, that's per $1,000. You can multiply that by per 100,000 as well, but it's dropped quite a bit.
Can you put this as an attachment on the ballot?
We can inform. There is new language that as we inform our patrons, we're gonna have to add some things to it though. We'll talk about that. Next slide, Tyler. So this is just a law. There's 3 things that are highlighted in the current law. This is law Idaho Code 34-914. The first one there you'll see in yellow is highlighted based on current conditions. That's a really important term. That's a term our legal has been reviewing and trying to understand from the Secretary of State. But what it means essentially is that we need to, on the ballot language, state what the current state of the district is right now. The current state of the district is we have a levy, we have a bond, it's our current rate. And then as we're talking about the levy increasing, that needs to be on there because it is an increase to the levy, but the overall tax rate will drop when the bond leaves on June 30th. The next highlighted is the actual exact words that we have to have in the ballot language. And it's verbatim, the proposed levy replaces an existing levy that will expire on, we got to put the date, and the current cost is blank per 100,000 of taxable value, and you'll see that when you look at the ballot language. And then the last one is another important one our lawyers have been looking at. The ballot question may not include other information or language regarding any bond, levy, or other matter. And that's where we can't really explain much more because it has to only specifically be what this law is talking about. Next slide, Tyler. There's the language that you'll see that will be on it. Real similar to what you just saw in the law. And then it'll tell us that we have to tell you for how many years. And then the last one, this is something that's new this year that we found out as well, House Bill 286, which will require any information that we send out has to have the previous slide's information knowledge in it. So we'll have to talk about how much of it's going to cost and how much the increase or decrease would be per $100,000. So we'll have to have disclaimers kind of on the information that we send out, which is new for us. Okay, ballot language.
That's interesting.
Maybe you want to bring those up, Tyler? All right, we look at, this is the $13.7 million one. Looking at sections 1 and 2 and 3 are all just basically state, 1, 2, and 3 kind of just state what we're doing here. Go down the next one. This is the new kind of requirement. I'll stop right there. So we do have to, all districts now have to be very clear and transparent of what is actually on the levy. We have done this, we've kind of always have stated this with our patrons. So this isn't really new for us and not any different, but to be on the ballot, it's on there now and a requirement. So it clearly shows what we're asking for.
So that's really no big deal as far as.
Nope. Not a big change there. Next slide, or next, if you would go up a little bit. Okay, the first one where it starts, this is the question. This is the exact language that you'll see on there. And you'll see it talks about the dollar amount basically and when it would start, for how many years, when it would end, and then when the board, if they so choose, when they would adopt it. That's the first paragraph. The second paragraph is the estimated average annual cost to the taxpayer on the proposed levy is a tax of $65 per 100,000 of taxable assessment value per year based on the current conditions. So we'll talk about what that estimate is going to be. And again, it's an estimate, as Randy had mentioned. The proposed levy replaces an existing levy. And so in the third paragraph, which expires. And here's where our current levy is. So our current levy now is a cost of $59 per 100,000 of taxable value. Therefore, if we were to, if the board were to adopt the 13.7, it would be a tax increase, you'll see there, of $6 per 100,000 because the 65 per 100,000 is $6 more than 59. And when I read this, when I saw it last week, that's where it kind of like, hate to see that. But it makes sense when you think through it. It just initially it kind of hit me like, wait a second, we had talked about it wasn't going to be a let's see a break.
Well, there's no context.
And there's no ability for us to put any of the context that we've discussed in there per the letter of the law. So part of the decrease that we've discussed has to do with that bond being paid off, knowing that there's money out there in school money land.
The issue that I mentioned around the state reviewing, we may have to do a second review, is the $65 per 100,000 does include the tax relief funds that we would have.
Oh, it does. Yeah. Oh, it does.
It does.
Yeah, it does.
Because if you look, if you remember back to the slide prior, it was $69 per 100,000. So it does drop it a little bit. So that payment is included in that language.
Okay.
And that's where our lawyers were wondering and like, okay, we need a check on that. And so the information we got from the Secretary of State right now is it's okay. If it were to change, we'd come back and we'd probably have to address it.
So could you go back to the statute real quick? Yeah, sorry. Right after the first highlighted section, based on current conditions, if the taxing district proposing the levy has an existing levy of the same type that is set to expire at the same time that the proposed levy will begin, which is this case, an additional statement may be provided along the following lines. So along the following lines, to me, does not mean it has to be word for word verbatim in that statute, in that statement. Maybe provided along the following lines. So I'm not going to interpret legally what that means, but it just looking at that, we have to put that in there so that it says that. But if there's a way to wordsmith that statement to include that language, and then whatever might be able to go in there to kind of explain it in a few words, I don't know, but at least it's along the following lines. Does that make sense?
It does, it does.
I don't, maybe
Happy
try
to-
to wordsmith it a little bit or see if that's the case.
If
but
we
I
could
mean-
reach out to Holly Troxel and talk.
I'm sorry, that right, yeah, Holy Thompson.
That's a good catch. I mean, that makes a difference, those words.
So substantially, it has to say this. That's what I'm seeing in that statement.
What I would share, what they shared with us is the ramifications if for any of this is off in any way would be for someone to come back, challenge it, and it could be to cancel the measure completely and lose it. So I think that's why they're being.
Did you look at the language on the ballot for Valley View?
Yes, Mr. Stockford did. Yeah.
I know that was a dumb question. I should have known.
Was it any different, Mr. Stockford?
No, the language for the Valley View trustees is very similar to what you saw in that body. The difference is really that second paragraph where we clarify how much the difference will be. Their first paragraph was word for word the same.
Exactly. So the paragraph that says this was a little bit different than what ours says.
Yeah.
So along the same lines, following the. So anyways, maybe there's a little bit of wiggle room there. I don't know. It's on.
And we feel that, again, from the Secretary of State and our attorneys, they feel comfortable at this point in time with where we're at.
Okay.
They have done a lot of work on it, bouncing back and forth. So again, currently, as Dr. Russell said, this is what has been brought to us from.
I was just thinking to soften that increase in $6.
Can we go forward to the increase for me? I just need to re-clarify my statement so I'm solved, and I just want to make sure. It's because it's a levy increase, but we're not going to be able to talk about the savings of the bond. So the decrease is we're losing the bond. We can't mention that here, but there is a levy increase of $6 levy to levy because we just can't
Correct.
discuss the bond. Got it.
Yeah. Can't leave that part out.
Well, I just don't
But if
even
there's a way
know
to soften it.
because we
with
are
the
talking
condition.
levy to levy and we are asking for money. So I think that almost makes sense. I mean,
It
we're
is. The
talking levy
is
to levy.
increasing, correct.
Can we
Yeah, I
look? Can we look at it at the 14.7?
Sure. Would you bring up the 14.7? You'll see very similar. Yeah, there we are. If you would go down again, section 1, 2, and 3, just have some basic dates and stuff on it, and then you'll see what it's for. Again, the only changes there is you would see the curriculum would be at 2 million, maintenance would be at 2 million, and then the language very similar. First paragraph, again, dates and whatnot. In the second paragraph, the thinning one there is $72 per 100,000. Again, our current levy is $59 per 100,000. Therefore, it is the increase of $13 per 100,000 taxable value.
$7 more for $1 million.
It's crazy. I know. I had to say, make the math for me. I can't
It's,
wait till we discuss this with
that's a
Mandy.
pretty
Like,
negative
help me.
ROI too, if you look at it from that perspective. An increase of $7 for another $1 million, and what do we get for that? Better curriculum, maybe some maintenance issues. So
Yeah.
I'm looking at the ROI on another
Right.
$7, but that's just me.
Right.
Why'd you have to make it so dang close? So,
We made it.
Let Trustee Simpson go ahead.
I think it's important to hear, and sorry, Mr. Dewey and Superintendent Russell and Mr. Dewey, I apologize, but if we have the value of what we get paid from the state for curriculum, to me, that's a really important, valuable number that we need to keep talking about compared to when we talk about 1.5 million compared to 2 million. That we actually, and thinking that 2 million is what we need to do our kids, the service that we want to provide and meet the expectations, right?
Mr. Duty, you have that top of your head. I have a rough number.
There is one point I'd like to make though. Yeah. We did years ago get some curriculum money and we got about 300 grand. This year, the money that we did get assessed to us was mostly for the new laws associated with the dyslexia. So we got money, but it was strictly to be used for dyslexia training and that kind of stuff. And some of the caveats that they did last year, they gave us like 39 grand last year, and this year they gave us we're anticipating $130,000 or $140,000 this year for dyslexia. But we have not received anything, to my knowledge, of for any kind of curriculum.
So, I mean, and just regardless, 145 for dyslexia training and things like that only.
And it's supposed to be PD for our teachers. It's not curriculum.
Oh, so it's not even for things in the classroom. Okay. But regardless, I'm just thinking when we're talking about 2 million is what we need to get the job done for our kids compared to 45,000 is not enough. Like, and I agree, like curriculum, I've said it before, should not be a supplemental thing. We should be providing. And I think if the thing I keep hearing again from our community is educate our kids, right? The reading, the math. How do we get those things? It's through curriculum, and it's through appropriate curriculum that wasn't published in 1996. Sorry, that's just.
Oh, it's only
Just a couple
2023,
years ago.
Mandy. Right, exactly, yeah.
I know when it was.
Yeah.
I graduated in 96.
Right,
Right.
right.
96.
You did?
Right.
Yes. But I don't need like health
23
books
year
because
old.
there are things that, it's health is one of the industries that we are finding more, and there's difference. And I bet there's not one thing about vaping in any of those health books, right? I mean, not there. So I do think it's something that we need to keep bringing up when we're wrestling with which option do we go with here, right? Like the need is huge there.
Yeah, if I totally agree. And I think, when I went with Dr. Russell to a few schools, we talked a little bit about the needs for schools and the facilities and how some schools are just going to crap. And how, the bond was going to help a lot. And I'm talking to the citizens. Where's the camera? But the bond didn't pass. I mean, this is the most, right now, this is what we need. Actually, is to keep going, not necessarily to be ahead of the game. And the hope is that the community understands that and does their homework and not listen to all those conspiracy theories or whatever it is that they make up. Because I heard a lot of stuff made up for the last one, false information. That was being sent out for no reason at all, just for the sake that people just didn't want to be taxed. But you know what? We got to take care of our students. We got to take care of our kids. So that takes money. And, you don't want to fork $9 million out of your own pocket, or it's $14 million, then we all have to split the difference so that we can all take the burden. And that's what this is all about. So I'm going to be fully fighting for this 14.67 million. That's my take.
Trustee Simpson?
No.
Trustee Quickly?
Is Dr. Russell, is that what your presentation?
Yeah, Chair Taylor, trustees, that is what we have to present tonight. Happy to answer more questions, talk through it more if you'd like, or ask administration up here if you have any others.
Well, here's what I'm thinking. And this is a really tight parsing, splitting of the hair type of a thing for me. 100% of the two options, I would go with the 14.78. I think that if that's what we have to work with, if that's the most that we believe that our citizen patrons would stomach, then absolutely, we have those two options. My concern is kind of what you alluded to, Trustee Valier, is taxes. people will see the word taxes and say, I don't care if it's $1 or $1,000. I don't want an increase in my taxes. And that's kind of why I asked that question about the Valley View levies, because there seems to be people that are realizing that when bonds don't pass, we are at this, and you've mentioned it and used this terminology, a financial cliff coming up with some pretty significant challenges in the finance part of the district that we have to deal with. I just shudder when I think if this levy doesn't pass, what position will we be in at that point? I mean,
Trustees, Clerk Lamont shared some information with us really quickly about those two levies. So let me go ahead and read those. So Valley View election results, it was a 2-year, 14 million supplemental levy. The levy will pay for 3.5 million for salaries and benefits, 1.25 for technology devices and support, 1 million for transportation, 750,000 per year for district enhancement programs, 500,000 for classroom curricula. The process, a simple majority was required to pass this levy. The estimated average annual cost to taxpayers on the proposed levy is 76 per 100,000 of taxable assessed value per year based on current conditions. Marsh Valley, that was a 55.79 support. It's a 2-year, 2.2 million supplemental. The levy will pay 582 for the district salaries, 200 for classroom curricula, 156 for facilities upkeep, 100,000 for special ed and gifted programs, 42,000 for athletics, and 20,000 for arts. Orofino, theirs was a 55.8 support. It was 5.3, very similar breakdown to what it paid for. Shelley was a 69.18 support, 1.54 million. Castle Ford, 75.63, 700,000. Valley was a 60.66% for 600,000. So we actually can speak a little bit of life to what those numbers were. Okay, just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention because it's pertinent to the conversation and we have that information.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just wanted to make
that's
sure everybody had that.
I'm done with the thought. I can't even remember where I was headed.
Trustees, anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay, perfect.
Make a motion.
Really quick, I do want to say I was able to view this over the last few days, and I really my fear is just the tax increase that they will see. To me, the levy is critical at this point, so I just am not sure how we don't pass it because we're critically in need of this money, like it's critical money, and I don't see how we don't pass it at the highest rate. It is going to be really hard because part of what we are dealing with, guys, is that it's really expensive to live right now. So people see even that $13 as taxing. Maybe we don't, they do. Maybe they can't see the hypercritical situation as clearly as we can, but it really is going to take that explanation. So I just want to make sure that we're really setting the district up for the best possible support here because we need the money. Thank you, Chrissy. But those are my thoughts. And I feel like this is very in line with the previous discussion that we had at our last meeting regarding this. And really none of this is new information. We are really just seeing how the ballot language will read and why. And so again, for clarification, it's because it's levy to levy. We can't talk about the bond savings once that bond is gone.
Well, so we can't talk about it
In the ballot language. Any other place we can,
Yes.
just not on the ballot.
Yes.
So when you go to vote, that's what they'll see and why. So like if they saw nothing else, they would see it's a $13 increase levy to levy. So that's all that they can see was the point.
Thank you. Can I ask one more question? I just want to make sure that I heard correctly. So that increased dollar amount is what the taxable amount is with the money coming from the state, new money coming from the state. I heard you say, right?
Yes.
So it's the lesser
Trustees-
amount. It's not.
Trustees, it is. It's with the tax relief money is put into that. Again, the lawyers were discussing, is there a way you could explain that in there? But they thought, again, current conditions, they felt like they couldn't put that in there, but that number is calculated in that expense. So instead of, as we mentioned, $69 per 100,000, it's $64 per 100,000.
Yeah.
Tyler, can I have you pull up our dependency can I have you pull up our 14.7 where we'll be at per 100,000 taxable?
Yeah.
Because it's very in line with what Valley View just passed you guys.
Yeah.
They did that 14 million and they were at 76 per 100,000.
So we're less, right?
So we're less, actually, we're 72. So, great job breaking that down, you guys.
So
Thank you.
there's an action item, right?
That's an action item.
I move that we approve the $14.78 million levy for 2 years as written in the board packet.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded.
Can I speak to it for a
Please.
moment? Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
I honestly came in here tonight ready to vote for option one. For the same reason that we've talked about, it needs to get passed because it needs to. And we need more. We need more than the 14.78. We didn't go out for a bond because we wanted above and beyond. Like we asked for the bond because we want what's best for our kids. And I just really find it hard to ask for less when I know there is a bigger need than even this dollar amount that we're asking. And I just really hope that everyone that has been paying attention and listening is willing to communicate with folks, because this district has been working hard, and this community as well has been working really hard to bring down these tax rates over the years. And hopefully you can see that the evidence is there, the data is there for that. And we're not asking for making our district the best. Like Trustee Valle said, I think that hit home for me. We're asking for, like, this is kind of almost a bare minimum to just keep going and functioning.
You know, I want to give us more credit than that, because I actually think that we're trying really hard to balance what we hear and what we know the financial status of of the world is right now. And I think we're trying to really explain the hypercritical need, because if we don't pass this means more kids, less teachers in a class. Like we're really talking now at this point that this means critical changes to our organization, but we have heard them. So I actually feel like we're really working hard as a board to meet people where they're at, knowing that bond rate is going to really bring that dependency down, hearing that relief is needed, and being very cautious of the impact. I really actually feel like we're doing our dangest to
I think
be
we
like,
are.
yeah, I'm like,
And I'm
listen.
just saying that if people haven't been following along with the conversations, it's hard to know.
Yes.
And when you see that $13
yes,
or even that,
yes,
that whatever the other dollar
Yes.
amount was, it's hard to know that's
true. Or even trust that we're trying to keep
Trust
it low,
that
and
we're
that's what
trying to
we're
do
really
that.
trying to do. Yeah.
So I just, I mean, it's my speaking to this motion is a plea to ask all those who care about our kids in Nampa to just help us. And if we haven't answered the questions you need answered, please ask. Like, we are here to do that. We're here to sit down. I think any one of us would do that. I think our superintendent and our administration would be happy to sit down and discuss and answer those questions. And I know that's moving forward, but I just think it's important to talk about.
Absolutely. Okay, any other comments to the motion? All right, motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, all right, guys, so we are going to go ahead and move into the appointment of Zone 3 trustee. We did go ahead. Sorry, Trustee Valle, did you have something to say?
No.
Oh, you're excited. So we did go ahead and send some stuff out last night. We do have 6 candidates. We do have a ballot, but just to keep everything straight, it will just be an open public vote. Your name will be read because it's public information anyway. In order to really speak to the community about really the qualifications that we each picked, because realistically, the community has asked that a lot and we have to deliberate a lot on our own. So we thought that that would be good for discussion. I wanted to throw out that I'm down to my top 2 because we have 6. I have no problem throwing that out. If you guys want to go ahead and start talking more about our picks so that as we discuss, we can narrow down the people because we do have to deliberate. So open to suggestions there. That's really how I thought the flow would probably work well for us. Thoughts?
So I just want to make sure I heard correctly that discussion and then maybe just narrowing down from 6 to a
Correct.
smaller. Do we want to 2 or to what, like what?
I think, is everybody feel solved down to their top 2 or do we still have somebody who's in more than 2?
So what I wanna do, Chair, if you don't mind me saying, is I wanna let people know why.
Yep.
I am, so I wanna go through the candidates,
Yeah,
and then at the end, I wanna tell you why these are my top 2.
So I think that we could even go through individual candidates if you'd like after. I'm just wondering for discussion, unless we're all individually solved and don't need input from each other. I was hoping that we would discuss like our actual choices as we would in a job interview. So I thought that what we could do is go ahead and give our thoughts on each candidate, even maybe if we wanted to before the motion. I just thought it would be more helpful to actually be able to discuss the qualifications if we wanted to bounce this off each other. That's how we do it in team hiring for my organization.
Sure.
Thoughts? Yeah. Yeah, I'm really open for discussion on this one, but if we're good with that, then we can talk about those qualifications, narrow it down to our top 2, and then go ahead and vote. And then we could talk to each candidate if you guys wanted to after that vote was cast. So that trustee, I would agree. I think we had 6 really great candidates. So there's a lot of that, stuff that we could speak to, but that at least allows us to have our deliberation that we need to, because we don't get to do that with each other. Perfect. So do I have a trustee who wants to start with qualifications? On the qualifications that you were maybe looking for, do we want to throw that out?
So about specific ones or the whole?
It's totally up to you.
Okay, because I can start.
Okay.
I want everybody to know exactly how I went through this because it was painstaking. First of all, Tracy Pearson, she did her best. She did a good job, I believe. But there were some issues and she had to leave. So I just want to put that out there. As far as I'm concerned, she did a heck of a good job. So I was looking for somebody who could be in her shoes because people elected her. Okay? And I can't dismiss people, and what they voted for. So I needed to look for somebody that was kind of somewhere along the range of where she was at. Okay. Then I went through all the emails that we received. Some people said, oh, I love 3 people. Some people say, oh, I love 2 people. So I put them all on the list. Melanie got 2 votes. Day got 7. Megan got 9. Wyatt got 11. Ray got 3. And Jason got 8. So, okay. Those are the emails. That doesn't speak for everything. Then I looked at the applications. And I graded them like if they were in primary school. I graded them according to what I believe Tracy's ideals were, but also according to how well they would fit with Mr. Greg Russell here and the board. And also if there was going to be, if we're going to be moving forward with the thing that have already been voted on, or if there's going to be kind of like, people are not going to want to move on from that. So, and just the things that they said, there was one that was somewhat negative. I highlighted negative things, and that was Ray James. And he came low on the other one with the emails and low on the other score with that I had with the questions that we had in that meeting. So I'm sorry, Ray, but I'm not even going to pick you. Thank you for applying, though. Then I read Melanie's, sweet lady. I love her heart. I really do. And I had a talk with Dr. Russell about the thoughts about her because she's been places. And I really love what she got to bring to the table. But she didn't score high enough when I added our meeting, when I added what people said, and when I added the score. So that's off my table. Then what is left are 3 people, Wyatt Hume, Haley Day, actually 4 people, and Jason Sue. So I went back to my list. Day was the 3rd person that had the lowest amount of votes here. And in my score, there are some things that she said in her resume that made me question about whether she wanted to move forward with some of the votes that we took had already done. And it kind of made a little more clear to me during our interview process. So I am now going to vote for Day. So left is Jason, Wyatt, and Megan. Megan had 9, Wyatt had 11, Jason had 8. Those are the top 3. And then during the interview, I really picked apart what they said, and I had to rewatch to make sure that what they were saying was something that made sense to me and what I would think will make sense to Tracy. And again, the scores that I gave him were very similar, 60, 62, and 64. So I'm like, okay, these 3 are pretty comparable, pretty good. And then I looked at the interview process that we had and the things that they said. The paperwork, their application. Sorry about that. And I really loved how articulate Jason is. He's got an articulate mind, and you can tell he knows how to talk to people. Okay. But then I love Wyatt, how he's very down to earth. He reminds me of the guy that I would love to go out to drink if I drank, right? He loved and cared for the community. And to me, that's important. I don't care if he's been to meetings before, and I don't care if he understands the educational system. No, if you're a citizen and you live in this town, to me, that qualifies you to be here, okay? But then there was Megan. If you read her application and how detailed she is with all her answers, and then I went back and listened to her answers and how detailed she was. She went straight to the point and she answered what she needed to answer, but it was good information. I will have to say that Megan and Jason will be my top 2 because of that. And you're not that far away from that. I mean, I think you're great, but those are the top 2 that I have left, and they're so close together.
Trustee Valle, I really appreciate, and I really appreciate your effort and your ability to speak honestly and directly from your heart. It's so refreshing because I know I'm having a completely honest conversation with you, and I really have so much gratitude for you, and I think you know that. I really appreciate you starting us off, and I think that the community probably really appreciates all of the time and effort that you put into this process and how much you considered everyone. I thank you. Trustees, do one of you want to go next? No? Okay, I will. Mine's a little different. I don't have a breakdown planned, but again, totally love. So for me, I was really looking for team collaboration. So the ability to collaborate is hugely important for me. If we cannot collaborate as a team and we cannot come to the table and we cannot discuss opinions, we can't show up. ready to work through hard, tumultuous topics. We cannot help kids learn. We cannot improve systems. We cannot improve functions. We can't set good governance. So I felt that the board really had struggled with that, but two, wanted to really keep in mind the community and what they voted for. Organization, communication, organizational health, communication were high for me. What I went ahead and did is I went through the interviews, I went through the applications, and then it really came down to both Megan and Jason for me as well. What I did after that is I did a follow-up phone interview with both. And then I surprise popped them questions last night that were really hard and said, sorry, trustees have to do this sometimes. And I actually covered the two most tumultuous policies. So both our back to school plan when we first took over, so our COVID plan or our health plan, just because those are one of the more tumultuous things that we had to tackle as a board, as well as our most recent gender policy. Both answered eloquently, both answered me today. Both were magnificent interviews. What I really loved about Jason and the emails that we received, and I told Jason this morning when we spoke, is that it spoke volumes to me that we would get a suggestion or a vote for Jason Sue from Rex Burmester, who's had a lot of involvement with the board, all the way down to Amanda Spurgeon, who's actually pulled the kids from the district because she's dissatisfied with our performance. So to me, it spoke volumes that we would have a candidate that would have such a wide reach and that was actually already speaking to such a diverse portion of our community already. And I think that that's really important because this job does really force us to have to talk to people from all different backgrounds, and knowing both of those two people's story because they're constantly involved with the board really helped me to really see you in that light. With Megan, you spoke so eloquently. There were things that you said that I think are very relevant to the school system current times. I will say Jason has kids in the district. So during that interview, I definitely felt like there was some skin in the game. Post 2020 kids are a little bit different. The kids who have been going to school and been in public school since 2020, they're experiencing something that it's hard to relate to if you weren't in school during that time or after. So I loved that he had that perspective. Jason had some also really good ties with things and going on in the community. And I really loved that in reading your application and then interviewing you over the phone. It seemed like there was a very in-depth knowledge of just current happenings. So stuff, that has to do with different things going on at Skyview. It just seemed like he was in the know. With Megan, she's been homeschooling. She brings a completely different perspective when talking about why she was homeschooling. I got a lot of information on devices and different things that really do create obstacles. There was a lot for me to learn in the conversation, and I really loved that as well. So they both checked the boxes for me as far as ability to collaborate. They both checked the boxes for me as being willing to answer the tough questions. They both checked the boxes for me of being available, taking my calls, which sometimes we need that. Sometimes we have to have a late night call, or sometimes our superintendent has to get us something late and we may work or not be available, or we have a meeting that goes till 1 a.m. That's happened. So I appreciate you guys being available. We had 6 really great candidates. I totally get why Trustee Bae. I felt very much the same. I want you guys to know the interview shocked me. I loved a lot of the answers that came not only from Mr. Hume, but also Mr. James. Like some of those things I came back and replayed, and I was like, those were really good points that I was taking notes. We had 6 really good candidates. I appreciate it. And again, that's what I used to make my decision. And I'm down to my top 2 as well, which are Megan and Jason.
I wish I would have thought about calling.
Oh, I thought about calling
So,
a meeting for coffee.
As we're contemplating who's going to go next here, let me ask this question because as far as open meeting law is concerned, and maybe you can opine, Ms. Clark, a little bit.
Mhm.
Reaching out and contacting. So the reason we do the interview and ask the same questions to all the candidates is because we get those responses in an open and public meeting. And I'm not saying that what you did was not out of line.
No, I
I'm just,
Yeah.
yeah, but now the public doesn't get to hear the responses to a trustee's questions after
She-
we had interviewed them in. an
She
open
actually
meeting.
did exactly what legal guided her to as well. And there are follow-up emails that
Okay.
could be provided not only to the public, but to the board that they sent to her. I was just looking for them to see if I can forward them to you now and also print them so you guys have access to them.
Access right before
I can right
we
now.
make a decision. I mean, and
If-
don't get me wrong, Chair Taylor, I mean.
No, I really feel like you needed
But
more
I
questions.
do
or-
think
or-
that
yeah.
that's something that at least need to be brought up because
And
it
that's why she's
looks
doing
like.
that. She's
Yeah,
disclosing
that's
it.
why I'm disclosing it here in public.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. And I'm glad that they knew what it, to cover themselves, so that's cool.
Because I'm
Yep.
not understanding that,
Yeah.
the perception would be, what do you got?
Yep, nope, that's why we followed it up with email. Yep,
And
And
she
we-
also
we-
is required to disclose it to you.
correct. Yep, so we checked.
Well, I get that.
Yep.
I'm not saying that you didn't. And please don't take this as accusatory either. I just want to make sure because I want to make sure with open meeting laws and all that everyone's getting the same information from the candidates that we interviewed. The other candidates didn't have an opportunity to answer the questions that you posed to these two candidates.
The other
So I'm
candidates
just
weren't in a
wondering
running for me, nor
was
was
that
it.
fair or not fair?
Yeah, there was no qualification, nothing that they would have said to those answers would have swayed my opinion in any way. I was really solid with my two very early on.
And I am working on forwarding those
Well, it doesn't make it,
emails.
doesn't matter
and
now.
Also.
That was all. I just wanted some clarification. Trustee Simpson, do you want to? I will defer.
You can go right ahead if you want to go.
So a little bit different take on this as I was doing as I was listening to the interview or conducting the interview. Appreciate all the responses. I was impressed with the responses. We got a very strong field of candidates, and it was difficult. As each question was read and I heard each response, the way I did that is I just assigned a number between 1 and 10 of how strong the response was on kind of a, I think I'm a pretty good read of people and, I get a pretty good sense. And usually that's not always, it's not 100%, but I'm pretty good at reading people and kind of where they're at. So I assigned a number between 1 and 10 to the questions, responses. 1 being not good, 10 being the best response. And I figured then I would just add them all up and see who came out on top with that initial, the initial response, my initial gut reaction type of a thing. The three that floated to the top were Jason, Ray, and Haley, Miss Day. So I think what I'm about to say might surprise some people. As I thought about the responses, as I went back and looked at the applications, I was impressed with the more I looked and more I thought about it. There's the commitment factor trustees have on the board with the district. And that is like Trustee Taylor or Chair Taylor said, is skin in the game. And so that was one thing I was looking at is, do they have kids in the district? And so of the 2 or 3 that were the top, Miss Day does not have kids in the district, but her experience as a teacher in the district for a number of years was weighed very heavily with me because she would bring some of that knowledge with her, that inner working knowledge, boots on the ground type of a thing, which I think is very valuable. But beyond that, as I thought about that quite a bit, as valuable as that is, it is not our job as the board of trustees to teach the kids. So having the knowledge of being a teacher and the experience of being a teacher, although very valuable, we leave it up to the staff to provide that. We provide the guidance and the governance of this district. We don't do the actual teaching. So after considering that, the other 2 that were kind of rose to the top were Ray and Jason. Ray's got a lot of experience, professional experience with the district. Really impressed with his resume. But it almost seemed a little bit too clinical to me for whatever reason. That was just my initial gut reaction. What I liked about Jason's responses, and if I'm leaning towards my top two, is Jason's professionalism. You work with professional people in this district.
Correct.
You work in a professional environment. You have professional conversations. You work with professional people, and that's what impressed me about Jason from a gut reaction type of an initial reaction. His experience with the Meridian, I almost said Meridian School District, but the Meridian Library, and some of those I know there hasn't been any controversy in the Meridian Library or any other libraries around, but that experience alone, I think, not necessarily that specific, but having embroiled in some of those controversies, and I'm sure that some of them will come up later down the road, we just don't know what they are yet. I think that experience is going to be very valuable to this team of trustees governing this district, not teaching kids, governing the district. There were a couple of answers from specific candidates about disagreement. And that kind of stood out to me. I like disagreement. Chair Taylor and I don't agree on everything.
You just witnessed.
Trustee
We
Sutton
don't agree.
and I don't agree on everything. Trustee
You
Valier
witnessed
don't agree
that.
on everything.
You also witnessed.
Dr. Russell and I may not agree anything, but he's way too polite to let me know that.
Agreed.
But we don't agree on everything, and I love that. I think there's a lot of value in that, and I think that's very, very healthy for any organization. If we're all driving down the road in the same direction and no one makes a move, it's going to be, one, really boring, but two, we can't grow. We can't learn from each other when there's no disagreement. So there is absolutely going to be disagreement. It's how people handle that. I was impressed with Haley Day's response when it comes to that, respectfulness and civil disagreement. And I was impressed with Jason's response to that civil disagreement and how they would handle that. So the healthy disagreement is a big one for me. The skin in the game is a big one for me. Working with professional people in a professional environment is really big with me. So those, my top two that I'm leaning towards is Mr. Jason and Miss Haley. And I know that might surprise a few people.
Hey, Angie.
I didn't know I was coming in today with top two. And then,
If you don't have to,
It's
don't
throwing
feel
me.
like you have to narrow it down.
You can do whatever
I
you
can-
do whatever you do.
I feel like I'm going to talk through my process like everybody else did and get the names out there. So I want to say I disagree. I think you all have skin in the game or you wouldn't have applied. One, and this coming from somebody who doesn't have children that attend the district and haven't and maybe will in a few number of years, but not yet. I think living in this community and wanting to be involved and caring about our kids is, and you, like I said, you all applying to me is skin in the game. So that wasn't something that I really took into account. And I can't disagree with the things that were said across the board, which is what really made this decision super hard. So I focused in on the roles and expectations of what's this job, is what I looked at and thought, okay, who's most prepared and willing to know what moving forward, what's the priorities here. And based on the responses, I feel like we need to teach people a lot more about what our job is.
I did that.
Cause it's hard to know and hard unless you're sitting here and you're here every time to see it. I think most of the responses, I felt like almost all 6 candidates wanted to have discussion behind closed doors that we are having an open session, and it isn't easy to do that. Because we all are passionate about kids, and I think when we get passionate about things, we sometimes get loud, and we sometimes get emotional, and we sometimes interject, and so I was thinking, what sort of passions and things are we missing that we don't have currently on the board? I will tell you that probably my top 3 that rose to the top were Jason, Ray, and Haley. And my thinking was, you know, I'm not running again. I've got some things in my life that I got to prioritize. So I'm sad to say that in December I will be done and we'll miss this. I've gained a ton of knowledge, and I thought Haley would be a good like replacement, right? But I went, nope, that's not what we're doing here, because my zone is going to elect somebody in November. And so for that, I'm leaning towards no. And again, I really hope all 6 of these people, regardless, are helping and want to be on committees and want to do things in this district, because we need it. And I would value their opinion. And as a community member, I would value them being on those committees and having those discussions. Similar with Ray, just wondering, like, too much. It was very clinical, which is fine. Like that's, and some people do very well with that. But I think Jason and Haley would probably be my top 2. And I think you guys all hit all the main big points on Jason as to why you guys had him at the top of your list as well. But yeah, I think Haley and Jason, based on similar to Trustee Kirkman, which rarely ever happens,
I
that
told you
we
people were gonna be surprised.
agree on things, but just on the responses to, dealing with the conflict and the having the discourse, and then dealing with after the vote, what happens next. So I would say probably Jason and Haley are my top 2.
Trustee Taylor, one of the things that I also considered, and I think everybody on this board did, is I was looking for, and let me speak to why I think Haley's decision for me, or my decision to put Haley in the top 2 might surprise some people, is the healthy disagreement. To have a well-rounded board, I was looking for a trustee that could complement what we are doing as a group. And and that's why we have an odd number, is so that there is never, well, not ever, but we hope that there's not a tie, that there's always we're moving things forward. And so I was really looking with these candidates is what could complement, with an E, the current board, or what even in the near future the board might be. And so that was one of the things that I really thought about.
I think that that's a really good perspective to share, and I think that that's a perspective that you and I may share, because we came in at the same time, we were elected at the same time. And
it was a different world.
It was a different world than we are now. And Mandy, I've learned so much from you. I really feel like at some point it's just been a blessing to get to know you this way, because you have such big shoes to fill. So that was something I took into consideration as well. I just found that Jason really checked that box too. Very well read. We would hope so. You work at a library. We hope that you read your books.
Balanced is the word.
Balanced. It was very balanced for me, and it really spoke highly to me. Like I said, that you were somebody who obviously speaks to a wide range of our community, and so I want to speak life to what Jeff said. There's nothing to add. I just really do understand where he's coming from, and it may be hard if you haven't sat in this position for the last 1.5 years, but this is a life-changing job.
Chair, if I can say something.
Please.
Can I ask our superintendent what his thoughts?
No. Well, I don't
So
think
it's a
that.
little bit of a conflict of
that's-
interest, because it would be like picking your own boss.
What's
Yeah.
wrong with that?
No.
I'm going to say point of order. I'm going to say point of order on this one, Marco. get a point of order.
That's the first time.
It's the first time because I do love that you consider him so highly because
I
he has
do,
a hard job.
because
Yep,
he's gonna have to work with them
he does.
after we're all gone.
Yeah, but you don't get to choose your boss.
You don't.
Sometimes
You
I do.
don't. And I
Sometimes with
agree.
you, sometimes you do, but I wouldn't make you
No,
do
Not
that.
today.
yeah, I don't want to beat around the bush. I think we've all kind of,
Okay,
the only person that's left is Jason.
okay. So
That all four of us agree.
Ballots are-
that's what the ballots are for. So if you want to do your ballot and sign it and give it to Clerk Lamont, she will go ahead and cast that for us on public record. We should
Where's
all,
the ballot? Oh,
we should all have a
Yeah.
ballot.
Did you find it?
So I just put a color beam by your agenda. Okay.
not there.
Keep going. You added things too.
I-
Is it under, yeah, it's under your agenda overnight.
Oh. Yeah, do it with marker.
Do it. You're filming. Thank you.
We don't know who the color, I guess we all signed them too.
Yeah, so the name will be read along with our name just for public record, and then trustee Valle will give you the honors of making the motion. And then if we want to, we can also reserve time right after that if there's any other comments that we want to say to any of our other candidates.
Oh dear, I have to eliminate handwriting really quick. Your signatures are a little.
I printed my name so you
Thank
know
you.
it was me.
Oh, you.
Well, I've always
You
told
have
my
to be able to read
signature
it?
was beautiful.
It's a elimination.
My signature, you don't tell me.
Jason Sue is Jeff Cookman. Jason Sue, Mandy Simpson. Jason Sue, Marco Valle. Jason Sue, Brooke Taylor.
It's such an appropriate reaction that you're having. It's, yeah, congratulations, Mr. Sue.
It's not official yet.
Right, trustee Biden, if you want to make it official.
Well, I don't have the wording in front of me, so I'm gonna make it. And if I say something wrong, please correct me.
Kirk Lamont.
I move that we appoint Jason Sue to be trustee for zone number 3 as of
The next board meeting.
the next board meeting.
I second. Motion is satisfied, Clerk Lamont?
Is it at the next board meeting? We'll appoint at the next board meeting
Do
or?
we have a second? Sorry.
Yep, I
Yes.
second it.
Thank you.
Your chair.
So clarification, his appointment is, are we discussing right now?
Nope, we are.
All
I
in favor?
seconded. No, all in favor?
Well-
I'm checking the motion first.
Thank you.
So discussion on that motion.
Thank you. So the appointment will be official if you all approve it. He won't take, seats until the next regular meeting, the regular scheduled board meeting, which is September 18th. If he's able to attend that meeting, he will be taking the oath of office. If he is unable to attend that meeting, it would be the following.
Can we inspire him?
Well, if he's
No,
unable to,
it sometimes happens.
if he's unable to attend that meeting, we'll just find someone else that can take his spot.
I'm sure
You
will.
heard how there were some other candidates in
I'm
the
sure
motion.
he will. I'm just giving you what
Yeah.
is. But it wouldn't be, he would not become an official board member until he takes his oath of office at the next regular board meeting.
So the motion is just for an appointment right now.
And the motion satisfies that requirement. I felt like we said appointment twice and we threw out a
Yeah.
date, so I just wanted to make sure.
No,
Okay.
what's that?
Wonderful. All right, motion has been made and seconded. Trustees, any further discussion?
I just want to remind us that he can be invited to anything that happens.
But not part of the discussion.
Right,
or
right, but not,
table conversation.
yes, exactly.
And I
But just
want
can be in the room if there's any other meetings or anything
Sure.
we have before that.
Unless it's executive session.
Correct. Well, actually, if
Well,
we
we have
agree
one-
to executive session,
They can.
I
We
would
can
say
do
we
that.
have one that you probably should not be in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Coming up.
yes.
Yeah. Again, thank you, Wyatt. Thank you, Megan. Haley, I don't think that she was able to make it tonight. Melanie, Ray, honestly, and I'm not just saying this for platitudes, but it was really impressive. The responses, well thought out, the responses, everyone. I mean, if you look at this sheet, I mean, everyone voted to the top within 2 or 3 points of each other from my initial gut reaction. So from those interviews. So again, thank you for putting yourself out there and being willing to be a punching bag sometimes, because sometimes that's what it feels like.
Older.
But again, encourage you to stay involved and welcome.
And
to the board.
clarification, I am emailing legal about an upcoming meeting, and I will also add if his advice on,
Yes.
okay.
Thank you. I really quick, if we're gonna speak to that, now I want to ditto that. You guys completely made this process for me to have 6 people that cared about our community as much as you guys did. The time, care that you put into your applications, the follow-up email, the working within our community, the getting to know the things going on in our district. This job is thankless sometimes, super thankless. So it's not like you guys volunteered to win $1 million, right? You guys volunteered to get involved for some really big problems. So I really want to encourage you not to stop. It might not have been your time right now, but it doesn't mean that that time isn't coming for you. And I really want to encourage you to stay involved, because there was just a lot of, just such really good points brought forward in those interviews by, and to speak to the candidates that aren't here, by even the other 3 candidates that aren't in the audience tonight. And it was just such an eye-opening session to what you guys saw, why you guys chose to run, what you guys see from our district, what you guys see that we're missing. And gosh, it was like a breath of fresh air. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Seriously, thank you.
Same thing. I don't know. I mean, I hope you know, I've said it before, this is the hardest job to do, because it is a tough decision to make and to try and weigh in and figure out. And you, the 6, did not make it any easier on us. I know I left the interviews like just elated and excited.
Yeah.
Because I thought, oh my goodness, 6 people. I don't know the last time we had 6 people try to volunteer for or even run for one seat. So it's so awesome. And I hope it's okay to be continuing to reach out to you guys. Your voices, we want them to be heard. We want to hear them and we want to know. And again, I'm gonna plug, right, school boundary possible committees starting in January. Like, might be a good place to jump in. But don't worry, it's on my radar too, you guys. But yes, like, just so excited. I'm just really excited. I feel like we have 6 new people and well, it's not voted yet, but congratulations.
All right, guys, we can still even talk after, so I'm going to go ahead and call it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Sue, our new Zone 3 trustee. And Megan, I am going to throw out, he's looking for a parent for definition of surveys. Mr. Hume, you heard that as well? Survey boundary. Trustees, is there anything else that we want to discuss or anything else that we want to say? I definitely.
Not now, maybe.
No,
it's
over.
Oh, yeah, meeting's over. All right, we're done.